The first-class cabin went still the moment the flight. Attendant stepped in front of Sophia. "Ma'am, there's been a mistake. This section is for first-class passengers only." The stares that followed felt like needles. Sophia Mendez held her breath. Her valid ticket suddenly treated like a suspicious object. No one in those glossy leather seats imagined that. Within minutes, the cabin's pecking order would flip. She adjusted the watch on her wrist, a gift from her husband that always pulled her back to the day they met. At 35, her dress was simple, elegant, and plainly out of step with the designer armor surrounding her at priority boarding. Stellar Airways premium cabin gleamed, wide recliners, chrome trims, a whisper of champagne and citrus, uniforms pressed to perfection. Eduardo had insisted she take this trip alone as a reward for the charity gala she'd just delivered. "You deserve all the luxury in the world," he'd said before an emergency meeting pulled him away. He'd promised to meet her at the resort a few hours after landing. Sophia took a steadying breath and presented her first-class ticket at the door. "I'm sorry, but this area is for first-class passengers only," the head attendant repeated, voice cool enough to frost glass. Her name tag read Camilla Reynolds, tall, composed, and immaculate. She wore her blonde hair in a tight bun, gold stripes flashing on a navy jacket like badges of rank rather than symbols of service. "I have a first-class ticket," Sophia answered, calm and clear, holding out the boarding pass. Camilla pinched it between two French manicured fingers, as if contact might stain the paper. "There seems to be an error," she said, eyebrows arching. "Perhaps you were entered incorrectly?" She rotated the pass, hunting for flaws no scanner would find, lips set in performative doubt. A man in an expensive suit peered over a financial paper, gold cufflinks catching the light. "Happens all the time," he announced to the room. "Economy keeps creeping forward." A few passengers smirked. Others stared with awkward curiosity. A couple in matching designer outfits leaned together, whispering and glancing at Sophia's dress. Camilla smiled a shade too whitened. "Let me check if there's space for you in the back. I'm sure you'll be much more comfortable there." The emphasis made the message clear. You don't belong. Heat rose in Sophia's face, but her posture stayed even, muscle memory from years in the aisle herself. "Please check again. My husband purchased this seat specifically for me." "Your husband?" drawled a woman wearing a diamond big enough to need security. "Everyone says that when they want an upgrade. Next, you'll tell us he's a CEO. Soft laughter rippled. Another attendant drifted over. Camilla gave a knowing look. Sophia's fingers brushed the watch, Eduardo's first gift. From a time when she poured coffee at altitude and believed hard work could outfly bias. She had faced small meannesses before. She hadn't expected one here, from people in the uniform she once loved. A businessman drummed his fingers on the armrest. "Some of us have meetings. Can we move this along?" The cabin manager appeared, hat perfectly aligned, expression professionally grave. "Ma'am, there's a problem with your reservation. I'll need you to step off the aircraft while we resolve this." Polite, firm, final. Eyes weighed on her, some pitying, some satisfied. Sophia kept her voice low, steady. "My ticket is valid. I have every right to be here." Camilla's smile thinned. "Security protocols, ma'am. We can't have just anyone in first class without proper verification. Just anyone." The words landed heavy. The aircraft door opened with a clean hydraulic sigh. A tall figure filled the entry, Eduardo Vasquez. 6'2", broad-shouldered, Navy Tom Ford tailored to precision. Silver at his temples sharpened a face made for boardrooms and front pages. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence quieted the cabin more effectively than a PA chime. His steel blue eyes swept the space, assessing quickly, then fixed on Sophia, on the line of staff in front of her, on the passengers watching. The muscles near his eyes tightened by a fraction. Only those who knew him would recognize it. Camilla and the cabin manager traded startled glances, their earlier certainty draining away. "Sir, we're just resolving a small seating confusion," the manager said, voice suddenly soft. Posture newly deferential. Eduardo moved down the aisle with unhurried confidence, the kind that made people lean out of his way. "That's my wife's seat, correct?" 2A. His faint Spanish, lilt gave the words a measured cadence that still felt like a verdict. "Your wife?" Camilla repeated, color leaving her face in a rush. Eduardo stopped beside Sophia. resting a steady hand at the small of her back. Protective, unmistakable. Yes, Sofia Mendez Vasquez. Has there been an issue with her accommodation? The manager's composure cracked. Mr. Vasquez, we had no idea. We were simply following protocol to verify. Verify what exactly? Eduardo asked, gaze moving from manager to Camila and holding there. Whether she belongs in first class based on her appearance? Silence swallowed the cabin. The woman with the diamond necklace dropped her eyes to the in-flight magazine. The cuff-linked executive rediscovered his shoes. A couple who'd been whispering went rigid. Hands still entwined, but suddenly very still. Eduardo's eyes swept the cabin once more, then returned to the crew. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Before we married, Sofia was the youngest head flight attendant in Stellar Airways history. She knows more about protocol and service than most people here combined. A visible ripple passed through the rows. Camilla's smile died completely. She once prevented a mid-air medical emergency. Eduardo continued, tone even but edged with pride. Recognized symptoms before the passenger himself did. Saved his life. There's a commendation at headquarters with her name on it. I wonder how many of you have seen it. The manager tugged at his collar. A line of perspiration gathered at Camilla's hairline, threatening her immaculate makeup. The balance of the room had shifted. The same uniforms that had blocked Sofia now looked oddly out of place in their own aisle. I asked the flight to hold for my arrival, Eduardo said, a fractional pause sharpening his words, because I planned to surprise my wife. It seems I arrived at an opportune moment. The manager opened his mouth to recover control. Eduardo didn't give him the chance. As the majority shareholder of Stellar Airways, he said evenly, I'm concerned by what I just witnessed. The words hit like a silent alarm. Someone near the window gasped. Camilla's knuckles whitened on the seatback. The shine on her gold pins suddenly looked heavy. We were just protocol, the manager stammered. Misunderstandings have consequences, Eduardo replied. He took out his phone, typed with quick, precise motions, then looked up. I've emailed the board. Effective immediately. Every Stellar employee will complete new anti-discrimination training. His gaze held on Camilla. Miss Reynolds, you'll be the first participant. Camilla swallowed. Yes, sir. Eduardo turned to the manager. About the Director of Customer Experience role we've been discussing. My wife's background at this airline, and her experience today make her the best candidate, if she wants it. Sofia's eyes flickered with surprise, then steadied. Eduardo's hand remained at her back, a quiet anchor. He addressed the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the delay. Champagne will be complimentary for the duration of the flight. Then, lower but clear enough for the nearby rows. Please ensure my wife receives appropriate attention. Your future with the company depends on it. The transformation was instant. Camilla's authority collapsed into brisk compliance. She stepped aside, voice subdued, signaling the crew to begin service. The cuff-linked executive folded his newspaper. The woman with the diamond studied the safety card as if it were scripture. Those who had smirked now looked at Sofia with a respect they hadn't found before. Sofia took her seat at 2A. She didn't gloat. She fastened the belt, inhaled, and let the prickle of humiliation ebb. Eduardo settled in across the aisle, posture calm, eyes still storm-steady. Taxi began. The cabin returned to its curated hush, but the lesson hung in the air. Camilla avoided Sofia's gaze while delivering. Champagne with careful hands and measured apologies. The manager hovered, suddenly attentive to details that had not mattered 10 minutes earlier. At Cruise, the aisle felt different, quieter, lighter, complicated by shame and relief. Eduardo worked on his phone. Sofia watched clouds peel away below the wing, the watch on her wrist cool against her skin. She had chosen not to lead with his name. He had made sure she wouldn't need to. Hours later, the ocean would glow gold outside a resort balcony. But for now, the cabin lights dimmed, service carts rolled, and the question waited between them, about the offer, about what came next.
At the resort, sunset turned the water gold. On their balcony, Sofia and Eduardo shared a quiet glass of wine, the surf steady below. You always knew how to make an entrance, she said, a wry curve at the edge of her mouth. This wasn't how I planned our reunion, he answered, fingers lacing with hers. But I can't deny their faces were instructive. She watched the line where sea met sky. For years I've avoided using your name or position. I wanted to stand on my own, not as Mrs. Vasquez. And you did, he said. That gala raised more for underprivileged children than any event our foundation has held. She touched the watch. Still, I miss the independence, the track I was building. That's why I created the Director of Customer Experience role, Eduardo said, studying her, voice even. It isn't a favor, it's alignment. You have the discipline, the judgment, and the credibility. Today simply exposed what needs fixing. You planned this before the flight, she said, surprised. It was going to be your anniversary gift, he admitted. I know what happens at altitude, in aisles and galleys and jump seats. You taught me that on a flight years ago. He brushed a finger across the watch face. Remember what I said when I gave you this? Time is the only true luxury, not the seat, not the label. What we do with our hours, and with whom. Sophia blinked back a sting she hadn't expected. You never stopped seeing potential in me, even when I second-guessed it. I didn't fall in love with Mrs. Vasquez, Eduardo said. I fell in love with Sofia Mendez, the flight attendant who treated a CEO and a scared child traveling alone with the same respect. The last sun slid behind the horizon. The watch on her wrist caught the fading light, a small, steady gleam. So, he asked softly, what does the future Director of Customer Experience think about transforming Stellar Airways? She exhaled, lighter than she had felt in years. I think it's time for a new chapter. He smiled, relief and certainty mixing in his eyes. Then we start tomorrow. They sat in comfortable silence as the sky shifted to cobalt. The cabin confrontation felt distant now, but its lesson remained precise. Dignity is not granted by uniforms, tickets, or titles. It is practiced, or it is violated. What did you think of the turn on that plane? Did Eduardo's reveal land the way it did for that crew who judged first and learned later? Too many people are sized up by clothes, accent, or background before anyone knows their story. Have you lived something similar, or watched someone be quietly underestimated? Tell us. Your comments matter. If this story resonated, subscribe for more narratives that challenge snap judgments and celebrate the power of treating everyone with equal dignity. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. And let us know where in the world you're watching from.